Some of the biggest challenges were in the beginning. Most of us never been up in an airplane and never been near one. With the crew, you got together really 4 or 5 months before you went overseas to get to know each other. It was not a military discipline type relationship. You were a team, you're on a crew, there was no saluting on the flight line, no sirring, and all you were interested in is that everybody knew their job. When you put a crew together, 10 people who've never met each other, and say, you get on this airplane and you're a team now, that in itself is an undertaking. To get to know everybody, get to know the plane and the emergency procedures, get to know the missions. That is a job in itself to start with before you even get overseas. We embarked from Gooseberry, Labrador. We were weathered in there for a few days. And this is in wild country. There was no fences. And if you wanted to check out a rifle and go moose hunting, you could. But finally, after a few days, the weather cleared enough, and we took off at dusk. We were going to fly all night. And after we took off, I looked down in the water, and there was all ice floes. And then we flew between 2 layers of clouds all the way over for 14 hours. Our navigator did a terrific job, put us right on it. Our radios wouldn't work from the cockpit, so we couldn't contact the field. So we asked our radio operator to try it, and he did, and they got in touch with us. And by using reverse radio compass, they guided us to the field. The Ellsworth and probably most of your bases over there were temporary, and they were just cut out of farmland. You don't think of them as a base in the United States. There were no fences. The squadron areas were scattered all over in wooded spots. We had 4 squadrons, and they were all different locations, and I didn't even know where the others were. You were quite a distance from the mess hall and the flight line. You had to get transportation to each one when you were flying. The number of flying people was probably minuscule compared to the support group. And you had headquarters and intelligence to plan all these missions and to plan how you're going to get 1,000 bombers up to the right target. It took a tremendous amount of planning. London was a beehive of activity because it had all the different soldiers from all over the world. Canada, Australia, New Zealand, South Africa. London did not sleep. It was a live town all the time. The restaurants were open, the bars were open, the theaters were open. It was a good place to have a leave because there was so much activity going on. The flying conditions were crude, really. The B-24 was a crude airplane. There was no heat, no amenities whatsoever. So whatever the outside temperature was, that was the inside temperature. We had electric flying suits, which helped. After above 10,000 feet, you're on oxygen. And your only way of communicating is through the intercom. First of all, it's dangerous to fly formation for a long time, which it requires complete attention. You can't take the eye off the plane, so we would stagger timing so we wouldn't get exhausted. When you're approaching the target, you may have 2 or 3 groups in front of you. We got hit pretty hard with flak. These shells were all fragmentation, and they flew off as pieces of metal. They can do all kinds of damage to your plane, and we had engines damaged from flak. Waist gunner had a hit in the head with a piece of flak with a flak helmet on, and went through the steel and knocked them down. To hit the target, you had to fly through that flak barrage. You got that almost on every mission. I almost equate this with, I read a lot of Civil War books. The South would prepare a fortified position, and then the Union troops would have to charge it. Well, this is almost like it because you can see the flak. If you're second in line or third line, you can see the flak barrage in front of you, and you knew you were going to have to fly through it to get to the target. most dangerous mission would be the supply mission to the paratroopers during the bridge too far. The reason it was dangerous, we were flying at about 400 or 500 feet over enemy territory and had to make 3 passes. And each pass, the machine gunners on the ground were pot-shotting others. And during we had made 3 passes, and during the 3rd pass, they got knocked down 2 of the planes in front of us in the front squadron. Number 2 engine partially damaged, and they shot us up pretty good to knock number 4 engine out. The hydraulic pressure tank was punctured, and the hydraulic fluid came out in a form of fog and filled the cockpit. At the same time, a tracer nicked the radio operator in the rear end, and he hollered. And the number 4 engine was quit right immediately. It stopped. And at 400 feet, that's a challenge. I got back from overseas just before Christmas. Adjusting was not fast, and it was not easy because I was never stationed in what I would call a civilized area. And you had time to think a little bit about calming down and unwinding from being in combat that time. By the time I went to some reunions, we had been out of touch maybe 20 years or more. I think it was great going to reunions. The first reunion was Nashville, Tennessee, and about 5 or 6 of us were there. We had a great time just getting together and catching up on the news from each other and getting to know each other again. Millions of people died. Mistakes were made all over. If you can avoid war at all prices, you should. Well, I think people take it for granted that they have a democracy for granted, but they shouldn't do that. Democracy requires constant vigilance and work to keep it. And people who do not understand that are probably lost. I would say they better take an interest in what's going on and put a price on their democracy and understand that democracy is sloppy and it is unsure. But the alternatives of a dictatorship is one hell of a lot worse. When you only have 60% of the people voting, it's a bad sign. People should take more interest of what's going on in the country and vote their choice. It's not a story alone about me. I'm talking about all of the people. This is what they had to go through. If I would do this all again, giving the same world conditions and the dangers involved in the world the way they were going, I would do it again, yes.